Welcome to the Making Sense of Marketing video series, where we look to educate and inspire people with their marketing. Today we want to look at an example of a business who is standing out from the crowd in a very competitive market. A special guest who, along with his great uncle Kenny, is responsible for Wakachangi beer and SnackaChangi chips. So welcome, Leigh. Thank you for agreeing to the interview.
Well, thanks for having me.
I just want to start off by asking you, you introduced the Wakachangi beer back in 2013, and then the SnackaChangi chips about 6 months ago. Take me through how you came to the decision to produce the beer, and then more recently the chips.
2013, was it?
Yeah, apparently.
To be honest, I can't believe it's that long ago, but it never seemed to be a conscious effort to suddenly go, look, I want to do a beer. Other than the fact that I remember we were doing a lot of TV at the time, a show called Moon TV.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, and not in a commercial sense either, and seeing things like the Wellington Sevens, and seeing half these people dressed up as Speedo cops and Hamster Man, characters from the TV show, and they certainly seemed to be resonating. The TV show seemed to be resonating with a sector of the community, mainly, I suppose, if you had to break it down, male skewed, on the younger side. So I thought, is there any way of capitalizing on this? And I don't mean, and again, not purely financial, more like it's all very well having people yell out, hey, well, that guy, all this sort of stuff, and it's great for your ego, but there was nothing tangible you could attach to it,
right,
other than people watch the TV show and then it would be off air for another year, and then you start again. So I just thought, is there a way you could do something in between that time to just keep things ticking over? And if it's financial, that's great, but almost a way of just keeping yourself out there. And we were literally sitting in an office like this with Brent Splain, who I worked with from day one, and this girl, Katie, who was working with us, between TV shows, and I said, shit, I think I might start a beer. And
it's just that random.
It was that simple, and I'm quite impulsive in a way. And someone like Brent would go, cool, well, we should come up with an idea and work it out, and then we could, maybe in a week or so. And I said, no, we've got to do it now, find out. So I must have thought about this before, but I thought the name Wakachangi, which is something I used in an old sports cafe clip when I was doing a story on the river, Waikato River down in Hamilton. I was going, the old Misty, the old Waka, the old Wakatumba. So I was either going to call it Wakatumba or Wakachangi.
Right.
So I just went on Facebook and said, thinking of starting a beer brand called Wakachangi, and like that, and just posted it, and it just went ballistic.
That was your market research.
And that was totally all the market research I needed. It was enough for my ego that like 5,000 people just posted, yes, do it, and and if you could be bothered reading through all the posts, it was all your market research. Oh yeah, about time someone brought out a lager with this and this and that, so then we started thinking about it. Okay, well, how are we going to do this?
Yeah,
it's a real. I've always had an approach, I suppose, of not, let's cross that bridge when we get to it. Let's blow that bridge up when we get to it. Kind of thing. Don't worry about it. Let's just start now.
Yeah.
And so I just jumped on the phone and started ringing breweries and said, can you make beer on contract for us?
Yeah.
And rang them half a dozen. And there was one in Christchurch, Harrington's Brewery, that said, yeah, we can do it. So this is a case where I'm going to have to buy the beer off them, a lager. They'll give me a prize for getting labels, which I'll design, and we'll package it together and somehow release it. It's mind-boggling now when I think that even went down this road. But that day we started this process.
Because the thing is with that, Leigh, is it's one thing to think of an idea, but it's another thing to actually implement it. You actually went ahead with it.
Well, I think that's always, it's a flaw and maybe a strength that I have. And sometimes it's a strength, sometimes it's a flaw. But if I don't do it right away, I'll probably talk myself out of it, and it won't happen.
Okay.
And if there's a lot of other people involved, and this is a theme that may come up further down the track in our chat, perhaps, that I might get talked out of it, or just the time it takes to get it done, it'll die a death by itself. Right. But if I run with it, what's the worst that can happen? It'll die a death, or you may actually end up doing it. So I've always sort of had that approach, and then perhaps relying on other more capable people of actually help me make it happen. But the funniest part was we ended up down in Christchurch at the Harrington's Brewery. And I invited a couple of mates along from Christchurch to come along because we're going to have to try some of the beers this guy had, Carl Harrington had.
Sounds terrible.
For us to try. Oh, yeah, but he just brought out 5 or 6 different beers. And this is how scientific the whole thing was, to launch a whole beer brand. He said, okay, there's this one. I said, I don't want anything too hoppy or too crafty. I just want something, a good lager, 5% alcohol type of thing. That was my sort of stipulation. So he gave us a sort of a range, and these are beers that he already makes, and we would repatronise into our brand.
Right.
So I had my father there as well, and so I was trying to get an age kind of. So I had my father and about
very scientific
3 mates and a girl, this kind of stuff. And we drank all this beer for a few hours, and we all I just made everyone on a piece of papers go put the top 3 in order, which ones you liked best. And 4 of us, I think, all chose the same one as the top one. So I said, that's good enough. That's good enough for us because we've got to get rolling on this. So I said, okay, we'll go with that one. I can't remember what his official name was. And then, sure, so we flew back to Auckland, and then I got a phone call from him, or an email next week saying, just to confirm, we've already started brewing, 10,000 litres of the so-and-so beer. It's already, and I said, shit, that's the wrong one.
Oh.
No. he's gone with the other one.
Oh, no.
And his little byline, but good choice. It's a quite nice beer.
Okay.
And we went, great. Okay, well, that's fine. Then we started to have sort of a conversation about, okay, Wakachangi, what's it called? This, Wakachangi, quite nice beer. Right. And I think that really sums it up because look, at this stage back then, this was the start of the craft thing where I think everybody was over-intellectualizing beer a lot, and I was just trying to put the fun back into beer, how it was when I was in my late teens, early 20s, when beer, halcyon days of summer and beer was fun. Just trying to put the fun back in beer. Let's not overthink it. It's quite nice beer. And beer is the most subjective thing in the world. So if someone likes a particular brand, that's great by me. If they like that, that's great by me. And that's what you find. People nowadays almost find a reason. It's got very political. It shouldn't be that way. It's just beer. It's just beer or quite nice beer.
It's got
Don't
a
make
bit
too
like
big a deal
wine,
of it.
hasn't it?
Yes, it's exactly. It went down the wine route, and that people judge you on what beer you drank, and really it shouldn't be that way. So we just wanted to simplify it without cheapening it. Just really put the common sense back into it. It's quite nice. If you don't like it, fine. Doesn't want to ask. So that's where the quite nice beer came from a bit of a mistake, really. And
so you actually stayed with that formula for the beer? You didn't change it back
no,
to
well,
the
funny enough, we actually went to a different brewery eventually anyway,
Right.
because that was going well, but we were literally, as I say, it's a contract brew situation. Long story short, a couple of years later, and it took off. But it wasn't sustainable financially that way because, as I say, we were buying beer at almost semi-retail prices and trying to sell it on at another retail price. So kind of long story short, we ended up going with McCashin's Brewery in Nelson, and that was a different arrangement because they came on board as more of a partner as opposed to just a contract brew situation. So they're taking a lot of the risk of the packaging and they're distributing. So we're basically 50-50 with them on it, and it wouldn't have worked otherwise, without that. So, and that was probably about 5 years ago now, I think. Yeah. That happened.
So tell me, starting with your beer, what differentiates both your products from your competitors?
As far as the product goes, not a lot. And it's in a bottle.
Yeah.
Well, now it's in a can. It's liquid. And hopefully we've gone for as I say, the word we used was a sessionable beer. Because we didn't want a very crafty beer that you can drink 2 or 3 of and then you move on. Or also there tends to be a bit of a sort of, in the craft beer thing, and this is nothing against craft, I'm just saying from a commercial perspective, from something I'm trying to do, there's not a lot of loyalty. I mean, if you're a craft beer enthusiast, just like a cheese enthusiast or something, I suppose your mission is to try as many different ones as you like, as you can. You're constantly moving, and that's what you're doing, which is great. But for us, we're trying to, in a small country, get a fairly big thing happening. So it really, the only difference really is in the branding and the attitude of it. So I suppose it's the attitude. We're trying to use humour or attitude to brand it, and sometimes that goes down the road of just look, it's laid back, simple, quite nice beer, and sometimes it's more of the sort of the backstory of it, which is sort of humour based with my great uncle Kenny, with the original recipe.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
And likewise
shortly.
with the chips, I suppose. That's. But I think that's the thing. I mean, what's the difference?
So what about your chips? Where do you see them in terms of?
Well, that was again. Obviously it's a spin-off from the. It's a different thing. I mean, obviously the brewery doesn't make chips, so it's done with a totally different company. But I sort of hate it when you get to a situation where you're not in control of your own destiny. You're twirling it. In the beginning, it's great, you launch, and when you don't have a lot of budget, the best form of marketing for us is for the story to be continuing.
Right.
That's when people talk about, when they post, oh shit, do you hear they're in cans now? Big deal. But we'll make a big deal about it. They said it couldn't be done, but Wakachangi is now in cans. And everyone's going, wow, they said it couldn't be done, it's in cans. Or some guy might go, other people have got beer in cans. But that's fine, that's the whole point. But that's a lot, having a story, because that could lead to an interview or something else, or it's a story arc, I suppose, takes you a lot further than just spending money on, say, some billboards, just saying, quite nice beer, drink it, and because you can't even measure if that's affected sales or anything. So the chips was a bit like that, because before we could do the cans, we had to have a canning line at the brewery in Nelson, at McCashin's brewery. And to their credit, they've put in a really amazing canning line down there now from China, but it took a while getting there, longer than I wanted it to be, but that's not their fault. It's just how life is, and COVID didn't help either, so it's literally just going in. But that was almost 2 years after I was hoping for it, so you're sort of twiddling your thumbs a little bit. You're obviously still busy, things are happening, we're getting the beer into Australia, so that's another little story arc. But so I thought, shit, well, what could we do in the meantime? So it really just got in touch with Griffin's and said, look, we're keen to do some chips. And, in the same sort of style. And there's a reason it was chips as opposed to ice cream or something, again, because chips goes with beer. Fits. And again, you got a limited budget. I'd argue that the chips, you don't have to be into the beer, or you could be underage. You can still like the chips, but there has to be some sort of spillover that the beer sales have gone up from the release of the chips, and I'd say that the beer also helps. The chips,
absolutely.
They're hand in hand. So that's great, because it's washing each other's hands without actually, and they're paying their own way, each of them, but they're actually helping each other. So they're stronger together, I suppose.
So with your chips, though, I mean, as much as there are other thick chips out there, there's actually not very many. So to some extent, that does differentiate you from a lot. So how did that come about?
Well, again, this is it's amazing how similar this chip conversation is going to be to that beer conversation we mentioned earlier. So what happened, so I went to Griffin's, and it's amazing sometimes people's perceptions, and again, I'm not judging anyone in these meetings, but you show up there and that people might know you from TV, these wacky shows and speed cooking, speedo cops, whatever. They're always expecting you to be, idiot's not the word, but they're expecting something wacky all the time, that you're going to go the wacky route. Whereas for me, it's always been, hold on, that's just the top 2%, the wacky part. The common sense part that's the clever part. So, they were expecting probably avocado power and lime flavoured chips or something. So no, pretty much said, what are your top 3 sellers? And they said barbecue, salted, and salt and vinegar. So I said, well, we'll do those, but we'll put a twist on them. We'll call it vinegar and salt instead of salt and vinegar, because straight away you've got a new flavour. But it's the same thing, without having to come up with a new flavour. And that's enough of the twist. That's the 2% wacky part that they'll get. And then they said, well, what sort of chips are they going to be, Leigh? I was going, well, what can you do? I got to admit, I went in this meeting a little unprepared. So I'd done a little bit of research, but I said, what chips do you make? And they went, oh, we've got the really thin ones, we've got the kettle fried ones, we've got thick ones, we've got crinkle cut. I said, well, can you do all of that in the one chip? I said, how do you mean? Can you crinkle cut one? Can you crinkle cut a thick chip, then kettle fry it? And then, and that's, we've never thought of that before. Well, can we? And they turned out they could. So we ended up doing, they're chunky, crunchy, crispy, brass kettle fried corrugated chips.
Right.
And corrugated, I think, came about because we weren't allowed to say crinkle cut, because that's, I think there must be a brand trademark thing. So again, it was, I would argue, that if you can look at the chip packets, it's all very wacky and it's exciting and it's retro, whatever you want to call it, but there's a hell of a lot of common sense in there as well. Going back to the beer, how do you research a beer to make it, how do you know if it's working the market? So what we would do, we would design, the second time round, we designed the box. So we've got no staff, we've got no reps on the ground. So this box has to be seen in the bottle store. If people are looking for it, they've got to be able to see it.
That's critical.
So Brent and I would sit in the office and would design a box and would print it out here in the office and, glue it and turn it into a box. And I'd run down to the bottle store, my local one, and say, Tim, how you going? Yeah, good, mate. Can I just put this in your chiller for a second, and Brent's going to come down and see if we can find it. It's great. So I'd disappear. And then 5 minutes later, Brent will walk in, hey, Tim, and he'll go in the chiller and go, couldn't see it. Really? It's right there. So we would tinker with it until he would walk in and he couldn't miss it. So that was that kind of thing. But then that sorts out the packaging. But then how about the beer? So when we did it with McCashin's, once again, we're in such a rush to get it out before Christmas, before the summer, that we knew that the first batch of beer was literally going to be coming out in the bottle stores before we'd even tried it. We didn't have a chance to, because it was like a 5 or 6 week sort of process to make the beer, and we could have messed around for another 5 weeks. We would have missed the summer. Right. So I said, I'll just go for it. And the first one came out. I had to go to the bottle store and
to try your own beer.
Try it, and went out and went home. Ooh, I don't know. Could be a bit hoppy. And then I ring up Brent. What do you think? Yeah, it might be a bit hoppy for me. Then Scott, who's at McCashin, who's at the brewery, and he's going, yeah, it could be a bit hoppy. So I'd go, look, why don't we drop the hops down by 5% in the next batch? I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what 5% means, if that makes a big difference or not. And he didn't either. He said, okay, we'll do that. Next one came out. Oh, that's right. So what we'd do, you'd go to a friend's barbecue, as you would, and there's a chili bin and everyone brings their beers and puts them in the communal bin. What we'd found from that first batch, at the end of the night, at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, everyone's sort of leaving. There's only a few beers left, and they're our beers. All the others gone, the Peronis, the Heinekens, they're all gone. Our beers were left. So that's all the research we needed. Is that for some reason, it wasn't quite there. And we did this process a couple of times. Go to the barbecue. Oh, there's only a couple of hours left, and some others as well. And then the last time into the barbecue, ours have all gone, and there's other people's beers still there. So that's all you could do.
Right.
Or you could go off to get a big room of research centre, and you get no information out of that.
No.
It has to be, I suppose, okay, there you go. Real world research is a very good thing to do when you don't have a budget,
And isn't it, to some extent, actually sometimes an advantage not to have the budget, because we did improvise like that, and sometimes you can have too much money, you actually get stuck behind the whole bureaucracy of it all.
Oh, totally. You think out of the square when you don't have any money, but also you realise you don't have to throw money at every problem. So if you had too much budget, if you suddenly had $500,000 extra to spend on something, chances are, what a lot of people would do, they would instinctively go give all that money to someone else to solve their problem for them, right? And they're not, that moment they do that, they're not taking responsibility for their own brand. And so it could be a big agency who've got great ideas and copywriters, whatever, but they're not really invested in the brand the same way you are. They're just trying to enhance their own reputations as copywriters, whatever. It's just a contract for them. And all that money's gone, and if the sales aren't really there, is it their fault? Is it your fault? You've got no way of gauging that. Whereas if you've only got a little bit of money or whatever money you have, you're spending it yourself. If you've got the confidence to spend it yourself. Because let's face it, every one of us, whether we're marketers or not, living in the same world, the same environment. We all watch TV, we all drink beer or coffee or whatever, so we know what works for us. So all I was trying to do is make a brand, that I drink, that appeals to me.
Yeah.
So that's all the research you really kind of need, and you save yourself a lot of money that way. Which, you're right. Not having the money, especially initially, is great, because you're not going to waste it if you don't have it.
No, exactly.
You can't.
You have to improvise.
Yeah.
So tell me, between your two products, what is the target market, and to what extent does it vary between the two?
With the beer, especially when you're doing that, people have to ask what the target market is, because of course, obviously, it's got to be 18 and over. But beer, by definition, you're going to say is a male skewed, and then if I say my TV shows, doing a TV proposal, it's 18 to 39 kind of thing.
Yeah.
But my father loves the beer, so I think with beer, that was another actually bullet point that I think I had down. Why can't we have a beer that a 20-year-old can enjoy, a 30-year-old can enjoy, and a 50-year-old can enjoy? And I think Heineken is a bit like that. These kind of beers, it's not like you grow out of that beer and you start drinking something else later on. Yeah, exactly. It's just a Budweiser, Carlsberg, those international big brands. They don't seem to be so, oh God, and when we started in New Zealand, we were still going through a really sort of regional type of thing. Oh, Spates is from down here, and Waikato draft and Canterbury draft, and why does everything have to be so parochial and geographic and all this? Why can't we have a beer that's what we said there, a South Otago beer with North Canterbury flavours, brewed by a West Coaster with the old misty waters of the Waikato. So I think
Mix it all up.
Yeah, that is a piss take of marketing at the time of beer. Because
Right.
instead of, oh, good on you, mate, Spates,
Right.
and I just, come on. Not everyone talks like that down there.
No.
And why does everything have to be so forced? And that's because that's coming from agencies, So we wanted to deconstruct that and say, why can't we just have a across the board beer which tastes good, which is quite nice, which everyone can enjoy, and it's a broad approach, and people find it, and as I say, if they don't have to be aware of me to enjoy the beer, and hopefully in a lot of places they don't. The chips is different because by default it's a broader market anyway. Kids are going to be buying that, and mums are going to be buying that in at the supermarket for their kids. So, I mean, that is as broad as it can get. There's never anything sort of risque on this branding anyway.
No.
And we've just transferred it there. It's just some humour, colourful. I think that really we're trying to appeal to every chip eater in New Zealand with the chips.
So with the chips, okay. No, I don't know because I don't buy them. My wife buys them. From what I've been told, your chip pricing is more at the premium end.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot cheaper chip options out there. Whereas with the beer, you are more competitive on your pricing.
Yep.
So by definition of that, you've gone for broad mass appeal with your beer.
Yep.
But your chips, you've gone a bit more of a premium into the
Yeah,
market.
look, I think I'd be lying if I said that was a conscious thing from me. So when we talked to Griffins, they would have had a strong idea if they wanted to do this, what area of the market they were wanting to sort of shake up, and be a disruptor in.
Yeah.
And it seemed to be that higher end of the market, putting a good tasting chip. And it's a tricky one because, and I'm glad it is that way as opposed to being the $2 sort of chips, because that would actually cheapen the beer then, because although the beer we're trying to get it out there at $20 a dozen by and large, we don't want it to be coming across, which is a fine line, as a cheap beer.
Yeah.
Because you can get Steinlager and Heineken, all that at $20 a dozen whenever they decide to do it. We've just taken an approach with distribution costs, everything, that we can consistently do that. It's not a reflection on the beer, I hope. But granted, when something is consistently cheaper, people will have that opinion, and we just have to put up with that. But look, it doesn't stop other certain bottle stores. They've got it on there for $30 a dozen, and and we're getting calls about that. We can't do much about that because once they've taken the beer, it's in Australia, and it's up to them what price they put it at. So, in a way, once you've let it go out there, they'll price it where they want to a degree. Chips has been easier in that sense. I think when you walk along the chip aisle, you're looking at price sort of, but I don't think these are cheap. I don't think you go, these are cheap and nasty chips, unless they're in unless they're literally in a home brand packet. You know, it's just different brandings for different chips. And I think the proof of that is, in my case, I never even thought about chip pricing until I got involved in chips and started looking at the aisle or whatever. Oh shit, no, they're there. I didn't really realise chips were chips for me then. Yeah. But yeah.
I know from talking to my friends and to my wife, you know, they say, well, you know, a bag of these chips, you could buy 2 of the cheaper ones for something like that price. But the general consensus is they don't care. They love your chips. They love the chips, and it's just the price has really come into it.
Well, that's it. It's the old cliche, you know, the demand. You know, if they're selling at that price, they will, but they fluctuate. I mean, supermarkets, as you know, all products are in such a way that they've got to go on special at a certain time. So it's a big game they're playing. And we'll be at $2.50 before Christmas for a whole run and all this sort of stuff, and back to $3.50. I think we're coming in kind of. We're not at the most expensive, but we're sort of, you know, in the top sort of top tier, which is good because there's in our situation, and they're selling out, so they can't keep up with demand anyway. So we wouldn't want them any cheaper, because that means our license, our royalty would be less. You know, I suppose, if they were selling them in there cheaper. Yeah. So that's again that I had to be honest with you. That aspect has never really been up for discussion with us on the chip pricing. Yeah. So so it's been 100% concerned about the branding and the taste profile. To be honest, that's all we've really been concerned with, which is good because I'd hate to confuse myself by having to play that game as well. It'd be too much to.
Luckily, it's just taken care of itself, basically.
Yeah, it has. But with the beer, I do get pricing would frustrate me a little bit. But you step back a little bit now, and I think it's settled down now where it should be.
Right.
Yeah. You got to know your place a little bit, I think, on the marketing side, and not get too involved in aspects that aren't your. Yeah, it's not really in your wheelhouse, that kind of stuff. Yes, you could be stepping on some toes, but within reason. I mean, you can still have a strong opinion, a consumer opinion about it. Like, that's ridiculous. They shouldn't be, but yeah.
So with your marketing approach, how did that come about? Was it dictated largely by budget, or how did you decide on the approach that you were going to take with your marketing?
No, attitude more than budget. I mean, if we had millions of dollars, would we have done more TV advertising? Probably at some point. But those ads still would have been the same attitude or anything. We wouldn't have involved agencies at all, because we are an agency here anyway for other clients and products and stuff. So why would we go to another agency when it seems ridiculous? It's like getting people to look after your kids when you're sitting at home with them anyway. Yeah. We're the best people to do that. We're not going to get it right every time. It doesn't mean we don't listen to people and bring people in for certain things, but that's more normally on a technical thing. If we want a drone shot or something, we get a drone guy in, if that's the idea. But no, the attitude is 100% what makes us laugh, and how you feel on the day, because you can look at stuff, social media. So social media has played a big part. Yeah, a lot of that, a lot of it's done on social media and word of mouth. It's the mood you're in the day. Sometimes you're in a slightly cynical mood. Sometimes it's a little bit more happy, but it's the attitude is always still there. It's tongue-in-cheek. It's self-deprecating. Yeah. It's slightly. We don't take ourselves too seriously. Yeah. It's just beer and it's just chips. We're not. Yeah. It's not cancer research. We're not saving babies. So I think you've got to be careful. It's not that big a deal. I mean, you've got to have fun with it and remind yourself to have fun. It is beer and chips. Yeah, that's that attitude.
And speaking of fun, was it always a conscious decision from day one to include the comedy, or was that just kind of a natural extension of you?
Whether it's a natural thing, I think, as opposed to a conscious decision. I don't think there was ever a decision. It was just always going to be that way. Yeah. It was launched that way. All we'd been doing for the last 10 years before that 15 years before that was TV, and all of it was pretty much comedy. It's a total extension of TV. As I say, even the name came from a TV show. There's little lines here and there. Great Uncle Kenny was someone that used to come up and pass things. That was always going to happen, I think. It's hard to shake it. I often imagine myself trying to do like a really serious vodka brand or something, and it just
wouldn't feel natural.
It just would be really boring.
Yeah, exactly. And so, what would be your main marketing channels that you use?
Definitely social media at the moment, so Instagram, Facebook. We've got it. Luckily with TV shows and stuff, we can be quite. What's the whole term? It's a circle jerk, isn't it? Is that? So we're making TV, right? And a lot of the TV lately we're making is sponsored. So as opposed to New Zealand Air funded. So the last show we did, Late Night Big Breakfast, was a sponsored show. So TVNZ gives a little bit of money, which is great, but not a lot. So the rest comes from sponsors. So we'll try and find a couple of minor sponsors to get us enough that we can get the show pretty much done, but then we'll fill the rest of the show up with our own sponsorship. Right. So that's kind of money that comes back for us, or we'll ask for some more from the brewery because they're going to benefit. They'll pay in. So we'll end up we'll stick our ads for the beer literally within the TV show just before the ad breaks.
Right.
So we're actually getting ads in the show. We're not paying for them, but we are because we're paying for the production of the show.
Yeah.
So no one can complain about that. TVNZ should be happy because they're getting a show, hopefully a good show cheaply, which they can sell advertising around. We're getting our message out there, and the people making the show are getting paid. So all those boxes are getting ticked, and that gives us content that we can use after the show's gone to air to re-release online, that kind of stuff. But on a day-to-day basis, it's normally, it's social media, word of mouth. I mean, just yesterday, a guy was in here yesterday doing music videos, hip-hop sort of stuff, and it's pretty well known now. He's done stuff with Snoop Dogg and that in the States, and he's shooting a big music video tomorrow on a boat. You can imagine one of these sort of videos, all these girls and stuff. We're going, oh yeah, okay, good on you. And he wanted a whole lot of beer, so we sort of sorted that out. And in return, we're in the video, and he's going to go to the shots, but all that stuff will be on Instagram and that's an example. Occasionally, we're doing a little bit more lately of trying to get out of your own, preaching to the converted, I suppose. Getting it out of your own nest a little bit and spreading worldwide and letting them run with it and see what happens. And it may not come to anything, but you've got to try those kind of things. And to be honest, half of them don't really work, but you've got to do it. Occasionally, we've done TV advertising. We've made. It's efficient for us to do things like TV. We can do the production side of the TV, the ads, really cost effectively, which will leave us more money for the media spend,
right?
Compared to a lot of other brands. So, because most other brands, I'd argue, aren't running out of a TV production company. So even doing a interesting Facebook video for a lot of them would be a challenge, and hence why they'll be using a third party, which would cost them more, and their ideas would be getting watered down. Sort of more and more, whereas we can just set up a camera there at the desk and do a spontaneous news update to people about what's happening with the brand or what's not happening or whatever. I'd argue that a lot of other brands would go through a lot of intermediaries before they even release that.
Doesn't it take the fun and the excitement out of it by doing that? By the time you get to it,
sucks the life out of it.
Lost a lot.
And also, by the time it gets released and the legalities and this, the idea. You know what? It wasn't that good anyway. It wasn't that funny. Why are we bothering? You've got to be spontaneous with it. So you stick it out there, get result. If it doesn't work, don't worry, move on and keep going. Whereas if you've got a half idea, it goes to an agency, then they subcontract some other agency, and a production company comes in. They've kind of lost sight of where you're going with it. And by the time it's done, it's dated literally, as in that concept's not that funny anymore because someone did it last week. or it just doesn't feel spontaneous anymore, and you can sort of tell that.
Sure.
As I say, sometimes we talked earlier, sometimes it is best just to pick up an iPhone and do
Just
it.
have a go.
And people see it and they get the gist of it. Or sometimes you go, you know what? You know that 3-minute video we just put up there about new cooler boxes, you know, for beers kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
This is an example of something this is just poor merchandise, right? But I guarantee we could film a 2-minute video on that, very clever, and we'd have to edit it and it'd be fun. And people go, that was really clever, but it's kind of self-indulgent. If we put a Facebook post up with 3 photos, just showing that and how many beers you can put in it, that would get just as much traction.
Right.
So you've got to sometimes pull back and go,
You can overdo it sometimes.
get over yourself. Yeah, and go,
Yeah.
you don't, just, that's enough. That's what the message is, and pull back and try and look from the outside in and go, what are you trying to say here? All we're trying to say is they're available. If you want to buy one, buy one.
Sure.
You don't, don't worry about it. You
It's
know?
not that complicated.
Yeah. So, but then sometimes, of course, it is good to do, you know, videos and things.
Yeah.
But there's other things, I suppose, I've got to be careful of saying it's all too easy, is that, I mean, I did radio for the last few years, other than, you know, I stopped last year, and that would have been a great thing for beer, because, you know, I was cheeky. I would use it as pretty much every show I'd mention Wakachangi at some point.
Right.
You know, they must have hated it. And I think that and I bumped into Mike Lane the other day, actually, from Radio Hauraki.
Right.
Quite a funny chat. And I was going, how's the show going, you know? And it's going, oh yeah, well, it's going good, but we're making a lot more money now. And I was going, oh, how's that? You know, because I thought we're pretty good at bringing it in. He goes, well, we can advertise to a whole lot of other people now. We can have beer people advertising now, because when I was on it, I just had my beer on there. So, but you just take opportunities to, you know, I mean, to get it out there, you get it out there. But as I say, I think bringing the chips out in the last 6 months or so has probably been the best and the simplest thing that we've done. And as I say, cans, as I say, the story moving on from one to the other is
Evolution.
because people behind the scenes watching that go, oh shit, they're doing well. They're bringing, when really all you've done is bring a can out, or you know, nothing's really changed. But otherwise, it does feel like you're just sending the same message out there. I mean, like Lion Breweries, you know, the Steinlager and Spates and all that. I mean, they've got cans, they've got bottles, there's very little for them to sort of. They can't go that far, other than, you know. Whereas us, it's still exciting. You know, it's a big deal for us to come out in the can and all that sort of stuff.
Because of the narrative that you've used too, you can actually make a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
If you're just a totally straight up brand, then bringing out a can, what's said to say? But because of the way you've approached it, you can actually make it a big deal. People buy into that.
Oh, totally. And we've really jumped on that, and we said, look, they said it couldn't be done. The big boys said we can't do it, but we've put beer in a can. We made a good ad on that, and that had to be shot in such a sort of a epic way. And we got these guys on the North Shore to do that, and it looks it's fantastic. And it feels very. If we'd just done that on an iPhone, that would have looked like we're just having a bit of a laugh. But because this is shot so over the top as well, it's almost like you can hear someone watching this going, the joke's on us. Like, you know, do these guys not know that other people are in cans? They've shot this whole ad, you know, with all the dry ice and everything. So, that's the thing. And that way too. I think this is something that is important, that has been important for our marketing, is you somehow still want to come across as the little guy.
Right.
If you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You want to be as successful as you can, and in a strange kind of way, you want other people to know that you're getting successful. But in a contradictory way, you actually want to come across as the little guy battling against these big guys who are trying to stop you getting to where you're trying to go. Because that's that's the story they want to hear.
Yeah, they resonate with that.
So, and luckily we are still that little guy, so it's not hard to pretend to be that guy. So, but that's an important thing to keep in mind. So even if you have to keep your the image of just regular guys having a go, you know, especially New Zealand, you know what New Zealand can be like. So you really have to come across as you are, just a couple of people giving it a crack.
Yeah. So one of the things that you touched on before, and I've noticed, is that you tend to have a lot of buy-in from people out there. Like with a regular vanilla brand, people, if you put out something, people aren't probably going to react. But like you put this out, and you're telling me about some of the commentary you're getting back. People actually taking up on some of the things you've come out with before, and sort of playing on that and having a bit of a fun.
They throw it back at you, like they said it couldn't be done, but we've put beer in a can, or we've brought out these chiller bags. No one's ever seen this before. You can put soft cheeses in it, and people are writing back. But can you put a camembert with it? They may never buy one, but they're getting in on the party. It's a bit like there's a banter, them and us, and in a strange kind of way. And I don't just mean me, but as representative of the brand. You like to think that people out there are thinking, oh shit, it'd be great, I'd love to have a beer with him. Or hopefully he or she would be just as they are in real life as they are in the brand. And there's a sort of a real aspect there. It's just someone you're having on Facebook, having a bit of a banter with. And you feel all these people out there, and hopefully they feel they sort of know you, and you do get to have a few beers with these sort of people. But there needs to be a sort of, within reason, almost a real connection with the people, whether they like the beer or not, or whether they like the chips or not, or both, or neither. They're still getting what you're trying to do, which is, what are we trying to do?
So tell me...
They can tell us.
Yeah, you changed the labelling for your beer, which you've translated across to your chips. What brought this about, and what impact has that had?
This is an example of overthinking things, perhaps. So, can I show you there? So, this was the original label for the beer.
Yep.
And this is the current label for the beer, which is similar to the branding, the box, the whole box.
Yeah.
Brent and I were quite adamant that and this is the tongue-in-cheek aspect of the whole thing. So we designed that box, as I mentioned, to stand out in the bottle store. So that has to be wacky and crazy. But then we went and did something which I'm sort of contradicting myself from everything I've said, that went totally against that. We almost undermined it on purpose, because we imagined that this will be sitting in bar, chillers, etc. So we purposely made it as old school and established as we could. So that was we were trying to do two things at once. Once we were trying to be wacky and stand out, and that was kind of easy. Yeah. And the other thing we're trying to do, hold on, let's pretend we've been around since 1648 apparently. 1648. So why not make it look like Coke or Budweiser or Heineken? So part of me still likes that, because it's more in keeping with sort of the dry humour. The more you own a gag, and the devil's in the detail with all the stuff, and as opposed to wacky. You hate it when you do a TV thing or something, and they do a promo photo, and because it's a comedy show, and you got to do a wacky sort of, it's this sort of stuff, as opposed to serious sort of stuff. So we're trying to be very serious, tongue-in-cheek, serious about the comedy with this, make it look real. But ironically, that was kind of undermining from that, and we would have stuck with that, except we got the beer into Australia, right, which was a big coup. McCashins and Nelson pretty much pushed that through, and Aussie said, yeah, that's great, but we want the label to be like the box.
Yeah.
And they insisted on that, and
really?
Brent and I were going, why? And no one else seemed to care, and but we're not going to say no, because that was a big opportunity. Because I think, because they do single bottle sales in Australia a lot, so that will be sitting on the shelf like that.
Yeah.
And
that stands out.
One of our other fears was, if we had a label like this, that it would look very crafty. And because all craft beers tend to have these funky labels, we wanted to have, so we kind of are shooting ourselves in the foot by trying to be too too clever. So they changed the label, we changed the label, and it's better. So it's great to be proven wrong, and what's more, it's consistent now. Because I knew when we brought the cans out, I knew when we brought the cans out that we would be using that whole label, so which I wanted to do. So why would you know, not that's sort of marketing 101 or something, isn't it?
Yeah, you want to be consistent
Yeah.
across the brand.
And that's something I kind of do believe in a way. And we've been trying to get there, but in a sort of haphazard way. And fonts have changed on labels, and that looks good on the chips, but not so on that. And I'm still not happy with the actual the name. The box name is different than on the can, a different font.
Right.
Is it?
Okay, I don't know.
No, it's the same now. So we've changed it.
Hard to keep up with it.
Yeah, exactly. But that's sort of, I'd put that down to a comedy of errors slightly, and probably us overthinking about it, and speed. We're doing everything so fast that you sometimes you need to stop and look back. You know, if we could do that again, we probably would have taken a breath and taken another week or so and got that sussed, you know.
Right.
Because we've got this amazing artist in Christchurch called Leo Bucket, who does all this artwork, and you know we send him sort of, you know, pretty clear directions on what exactly it should be like, but he actually comes up with it. But we've been changing the fonts and all this sort of stuff a lot. Yeah, that's something from day one I wish we probably were more consistent with.
But you live and learn though, and that's part
You
of the
live and learn.
experience.
I don't know what point would have changed it or where it was, but I just know that it was something that frustrated me from day one was this label thing.
And the thing with your branding now, you see, is you're consistent across your chips and your beer.
Yeah.
So you may not, for instance, know the beer, but
Yeah.
you see the chips, you like the chips, and then you come across the beer and you immediately connect
Yep.
them. And you touched on that before about how you've found with having the two products now, it's actually helped the sales
Yep.
of the beer, having the chips here as well.
Totally, and that's the most effective way. I mean, so we don't have a lot of marketing budget at all for the beer. I mean, you're basically taking your own money that you've earned from royalties from the beer and deciding how much of it you want to put back into marketing so you
Yeah.
could earn some more. Then it's a bit of a catch-22, because then you're saying, well, you're just buying yourself a job in a way. You know, at what point
Yeah.
is that, you know, pure profit kind of thing? Whereas you bring something else out and that's got its own marketing budget and the other product is benefiting from it, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
You know, it's a bit like if car sales go up, I'm sure tyre sales go up. You know, in the two different companies, but that, you know, or petrol.
Yeah, they have a symbiotic relationship.
They're just both going to benefit, and that's, you know, and I don't know how far we can take that, because, you know, you don't want to be jumping the shark and bring out too many products. And at what point will people go, oh, come on, what are you trying to do, bringing out this and this and this? But I think if you do it right, and keep people on board with you,
Yeah.
you could probably get away with a bit more.
Yeah, I could think of a few ideas.
Yeah. Well, the whole cans, of course, the main reason we wanted to get the canning line happening was so we could get into that sort of RTD market, that all the, you know, everyone's drinking all these seltzers and sodas and stuff now. We were trying to do that 3 years ago.
Right.
So in a way, we've kind of missed there's so many of them out there now that the rush is kind of gone. I'd rather sit back and actually see what settles and then come out with our product, which is pretty much already formed. You know, we've had it for a couple of years, ready to go. So that'll be another product, but that makes sense. That would
Yeah.
have another product like that. It's when you start bringing out, as I say, like a vacuum cleaner or a, you know, some sort of service or something stupid. It has to be something that you can visualize. Actually, I almost imagine standing by a barbecue and within a metre square radius around. If that's a
those
product
sort of
you can
things.
touch and it works, then it might work. But if you're starting to think, oh shit, that's something, you know, you're just becoming what's the word for it? Prostitute.
So you do realise though that could include sausages.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Well, the problem there is, you see, I'm tied up with Hellas, which everything is so. There's a holistic relationship there already, I suppose. People associate me with that and with beer and with chips. So now we've got the whole summer barbecue thing sewn up. Although, of course, I don't own Hellas. I'm just the face of the brand, which has helped me to. Which is a totally different relationship that I've got with these.
But it does fit with all this though, doesn't it?
Oh, it totally fits. That's what's great about it. If anything, it's not. We haven't, between myself and Hellas, what's the word? Utilised it enough.
No, you could bring out a joint venture sausage.
Totally. And it's something we could talk about doing. there's another side of it too. That relationship's been going for maybe sort of 15 years almost now.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit wary of changing it too much, because that could be the start of, look, if end of next year, it wouldn't surprise or be too much of it, but it would be sad if it did. But what I'm saying is, what's that old term, leave well enough alone kind of thing.
Right.
It's almost like that, and it's there. But look, if I was going to do a sausage or some product like that, it would be with them.
With them, yeah.
So I've got a relationship with them, and I certainly wouldn't do anything with anyone else until I'd finished with them, and even then, it wouldn't. Yeah, but you're right though. That is the other sort of product. So people must imagine I'm just sitting at home drinking beer, eating chips, and
hanging around the barbecue, thinking of your next idea.
Maybe gym memberships would be the next thing. Leigh Mills.
Leigh Mills.
Yeah, it might have to.
Yeah, that's right.
No, it is hard actually with the chips and the
yeah, that's right.
around the house.
Yeah. So what I want to do here is I want to just read something out here for people that are watching this that maybe have not bought your chip yet.
Yeah.
So I just want to touch base on some of the messaging on your packaging for the viewers. So on the chips, we've got, you only use hand-reared free-range potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
The potatoes are peeled left to right, then sliced right to left. The chips are cut using the crinkle hopper 3000, which gives 20% more corrugation than size 34 corduroys.
Mm-hmm.
Your chips are the winners of the best indoor-outdoor flow at the 1976 Finger and Snack Dip Awards. But probably in my opinion, your greatest achievement is that you managed to get the vinegar in before the salt to create the one-of-a-kind vinegar and salt flavour.
That's right. I said it couldn't be done.
So that's an amazing number of firsts. How did you do it all?
Well, that's it. Attitude. If they say it can't be done, that's when we do it. And the vinegar and salt, why should it be salt and vinegar?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't the vinegar get a chance to get in there? I must admit, when we tried it first, they tasted terrible, but we invested heavily on a machine that could put the vinegar in before the salt, and that we never looked back.
Because I guess my complaint has always been with salt and vinegar is the first thing you get is the taste of the salt, and you have to wait for the vinegar. Now with your chips, I get the vinegar first and then the salt.
And part of that, I think, is psychological as well, because you're reading it vinegar and salt first.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's true. Because you read vinegar and salt first, that's the first thing that you click onto, and you taste the vinegar first, and it's longer lasting.
So my son today, when I was talking to him about this interview, I said, they've got this new flavour, vinegar and salt. And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean? Salt and vinegar? No, vinegar and salt. They put the vinegar in first. He couldn't get it. It just left him totally confused. He didn't know what to make of it.
That's an example of just you're putting a twist on something enough. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
As I say, look, it would be great to go off into your kitchen with a whole lot of herbs and spices and try and come up with imagine trying to come up with Coca-Cola for the first time. Whoever did that. I mean, it's lightning in a bottle sort of thing, isn't it? So trying to come up with some sort of chip doesn't mean you don't try and come up with stuff, but most of it's kind of been done. So you're just really putting a twist on the branding, but hopefully backing it up with, oh shit, that's actually quite a good chicken chip as well. Hint there could be the next flavour.
Now, just again for viewers that may not have seen your beer packaging, and I definitely would recommend people buy your beer, get a box, if nothing else, just to read the story about how the beer came about, which includes how your great uncle to the multiple of 6.
Yeah.
I've got to make sure I get that right. Kenny Hart Sr. actually started it all. Now your packaging also includes a special VIP pass to any sports, music or special event, and it acknowledges that your beer won first prize at the Australasian Beer Awards in 1648.
Best newcomer, I think it was.
Yeah, best newcomer, that's it. So there's an incredible amount of content on your packaging, which is all obviously really well worth reading. So, you've shared so much with people on your packaging. What was the motivation for that?
I think, yeah, we wanted to do something different, but also give people a sense of the history of the brand. So I wrote all that sort of stuff. When I first got into TV, to fund it, I actually wrote a fake newspaper called The Moon newspaper, came out monthly, and I'd write all the articles for it and then get the advertising, and it was a hell of a disaster. But I did manage to write all this stuff, and for years to come, I'm so glad I did it because I had the energy back then to do it. But I used to use most of it for TV ideas for plenty of years after that. So I was used to writing, what's the word for it? Bullshit. It's not all bullshit, a lot of it. And enjoyed it too. And I think it goes a long way to sort of to help, because how else do you get the attitude across of the brand just with an image, or you can do it with just a couple of phrases like Wakachangi, quite nice beer, drink it, or something like that, who knows. But by putting that stuff, that sort of faux history, I suppose. But I don't want to use that because I like to stay in character when I talk about it and pretend it is real. Yeah. You know, depending on the format. You know, because then people buy into it and they don't take it so seriously. You know what I mean? They go, oh shit, this is right. Beer is just good fun, and there must be an element, as you say, of wine, how far it's gone with all the awards and this sort of stuff. And it's just there's so many awards now that they become irrelevant. And in grandstanding, I mean, it is just beer. It's quite nice beer. So I might not put something interesting and fun on there. And look, while people are having a beer, they can look at it and have a laugh and read it. And who knows, maybe use the VIP pass to try and get into a World Cup match or something.
No guarantees though.
No one's managed to do it yet.
So I think you touched on this before though. I think you said something to the effect that, you know, with a limited budget, you felt that you had to use the packaging as part of a heavy part of your promotion, and to really get people engaged that way through the packaging.
Yeah, oh totally, 100%. So, I mean, a lot of people. Aussie's a good example because the beers over there, it's been there a little while now, and look, they don't know me from Bar Sober over there, which is great because it's not, it's Leigh Hart's beer, or, you know, there's no preconception about it. Oh, I hate him, so I'm not going to drink his beer, or I don't mind him, so I'm going to drink his beer. End of the day, you can't rely on your mates or your family or your so-called fans to drink your beer, because if they don't like it, they'll try it, but they won't keep drinking it. So this stuff here is the branding, the backstory, the artwork for the beer and the chips in Australia, that's written for them as well. So we've called it, in Australia, it's Australasia's oldest and most trusted beer, as opposed to New Zealand. So we didn't want to get into a war of this is a Kiwi beer trying to get into Australia.
You're narrowing your market.
But some people were saying that when we first, you've got one on Anzac Day, why don't you have I said, no, we don't want to do that. We want to become across as this, because that's a short-lived battle, because people will go back to their natural beers, and they won't drink a New Zealand beer by and large, except if they're Kiwis. So we don't want that sort of situation. Yeah. So that was really just to make good generic content, hopefully that they can enjoy and get the attitude of the brand without knowing me or anything, or past history or past TV we've done, because it's a new thing. It's just that sort of dry humour.
So how is that then, out of interest, and how's that gone across over in Australia, given, as you say, they don't have that backstory?
Yeah, it's good. That's what I'm saying, that a lot of the Instagram stuff is, hey, you saw this beer, it was, you know, they're quoting the stuff. People do videos of them reading the stuff just as you did then, and cracking up in a group about the stuff, and it's great because it's just totally fresh. It's like someone reading an article or something, you know, and it's a beer box. Yeah. So that was something we were always going to do, I think. That's what we liked. We treated the beer box as a kind of canvas, if you like. And the beer box itself, the artwork, has actually turned into posters now. And you can buy those posters, and they're actually a standalone, you know, work of art's not quite but it kind of is. It's a retro kind of thing, and we've got them framed, and people buy them, and it's a bonus, I suppose, bonus material. So
you're in Australia. What's the long-term plan? So you've got plans to go beyond Australia?
Yeah, oh definitely. It's funny, isn't it? The whole COVID thing. So like the plan is to grow Australia with the cans, etc.
And the chips as well?
Yep, the chips are in Australia now as well.
Right.
Chips got into Australia off the back of the beer kind of thing, so they help each other there. But obviously we'd like to get the beer into, say, UK or in America, and there was a couple of situations that came up just before COVID where that may have happened. And whether that is us exporting it from here, or another option, of course, is someone over there licensing the beer and making it themselves over there, and we'll just get a royalty back that way. I mean, ideally, that's the sort of stuff we really want to focus on in the next couple of years, anyway, because that's the fun sort of stuff. And hopefully, if COVID sorts stuff out, we can start travelling again, and that's exciting. Go over there and maybe bring some brands back. You know, some other sort of things like, you know, spirits and this sort of stuff, and just growing this sort of family of brands. But yeah, definitely. But it's been very hard, as I say, with the COVID thing. I hate to use that excuse like everyone else, but literally, it's just shut everything in its tracks. So we just and you know, for what it's worth, though, I mean, it hasn't affected us too much actually, as far as a brand in New Zealand, because we're in supermarkets and. Sadly or rightly or wrongly, people have been drinking just as much this year. It's been fine.
So I noticed, like, both with your beer and your chips, you use the taglines "quite nice beer" and "quite nice chips." Tell me about how that came about and why the understated approach.
Well, as I say, the "quite nice beer" thing came from when we first had some samples of the beer, and the Harrington's brewery guy sent me an email saying, okay, these are your options. You've got the summer lager one that we do. We've got the winter lager, blah, blah, and he had a tagline by each one. Might be a bit hoppy. This one is probably not for you. A dark, drinkable beer, and the other one was some other lager, quite nice beer. And I said, well, that'll do. You know, that's kind of it. Yeah. And the understatement of that, we laughed. And that's enough. I mean, the people in the room laughed. You know, Wakachangi, quite nice beer. And I think with that platform, coming from that sense of honesty, it makes it harder for people to undermine you. Yeah. Because they're like, oh, you said this was going to be the best beer ever. Oh, it's shit. I hate it. Oh, it's disgusting. But you go, hey mate, it's just beer. It's quite nice beer. You don't drink it. You don't want it. Don't drink it. And that's what we're about anyway. Yeah. And I think the chips was us probably learning from our mistakes to be more consistent and get that message across the next thing, you know. Right. If we did a wine, would it be quite nice wine? I don't know. It sounds all right, but it seems to work for chips. Yeah. Although I would say the chips are more than quite nice chips, but you know,
that would be my feedback too. To be fair.
But it's best to shoot under, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
So tell me, there's one thing that I've noticed with both your products, and you refer to whacking them up to 1,000. Now, is that a code for a special process which is part of the secret to your success? Can you sort of elaborate on the whacking up to 1,000?
Yeah, that's a weird one. So that was definitely to do with the beer. Right. And I think we were alluding to our beer as even fizzier than other, you know, instead of approaching, you know, focusing on another sort of more beer connoisseur approach. It was a more of a sort of rip, shit and bust kind of thing. You know, we pumped it through the vat and pumped it up to 1,000 PSI, whatever. just before the bottles explode, we put the caps on it, you know. So trying to sort of get the sense that you've got a party in a bottle. It's sort of a sense that we're on the edge. I suppose. I always picture, you know, like those submarine movies, you know, and everything's exploding and the guy's got hammers and the wooden wedge and they're trying to stop it's getting depth charged and all this water spraying everywhere.
Trying to fill in the leaks.
I sort of imagine that's the brewery, you know, when we're doing the line, but obviously it's not. It's very controlled. But that's just an amusing image I used to have of beer getting made, and you know, in the sense that these bottles or cans they're whacked up to 1,000. You know, no one, you know, what does that mean?
Yeah, it kind of sounds technical, doesn't it?
1,000 PSI. Yeah. You know, It could explode at any time. So I don't know. It's a bit of danger element to that, I suppose. It just means nothing. It's like turning your amp up to 11.
Right.
The Spinal Tap kind of thing. And that again just
translated to the chips.
To the chips, yeah.
We'll whack it up to 1,000.
Whack it up to 1,000. What more flavour? It doesn't have to be explained. I don't think it's more of a total attitudinal thing. As I say, you're turning it right up.
So now I think it's probably a world first, but I could be wrong. You've developed a beer app. How did that come about, and how does that go for you?
Yep, that was a interesting thing. Again, being the little guy with not a lot of budget, and more importantly, no reps in the beginning on the ground, pushing it around the place. So we had to let people know, because we were starting off in a few stores at a time and growing into stores. It wasn't a case of just having a distributor and it ends up in every bottle store at the same time.
Right.
So we needed people that were interested in the beer. We had to let them know where it was. And around about that time, everybody seemed to be into
doing apps.
Yeah, but what was that thing, that game you walk around trying to find? Pokemon.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pokemon Go.
Right.
Pokemon Go. So my brother does apps and stuff, his job on the shore. So I said, look, man, I've got an idea, just because there's a two-pronged attack to the idea. One is it will have a practical use, which is you have your phone, you get the Wakachangi Go app, and wherever you're standing in the country, it'll show you the closest bottle store, cafe, restaurant, whatever, that has our beer. And I'll show you how it works if it still works.
I've got it. I've used it the other day.
And it's amazing. And it was great. And it's got the address of the bar and then the contact of the bar. So that was an amazing thing. And it ended up being, you know what, I could not tell you how many people would have bothered to actually even use that to go find the beer. And it ended up not being an issue because it ended up being more of a sales pitch for the reps that we had that would go into the bottle store. So you should take this beer. They've got this app, so if people want, they'll find it. So that's quite clever. And you'll be on the app, and they can show them their and they go, oh, cool, they feel special. And then also we had an instant database. So it wasn't really my job to be. I could be sitting in a car, and I'll just go like that, and I could find out, oh shit, we're in that bottle store over there, and I'd walk in and say, how's it going? Kind of thing, or I could ring them. It was almost like having a pocket database of your brand, but you designed it for a totally different reason.
Yeah.
And plus, it was a bit of a laugh for the Pokemon Go aspect, which not that many people picked up on. We did a little video for it, whatever. In a small kind of way, I was actually hoping that Pokemon Go would sue us for the publicity. But that's happened. But we've actually done that a couple of times, and no one ever has.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah, I sort of wonder, well, because you're not doing these things to get sued, but it wouldn't hurt because, and I think that's because, in a way, they almost see that we're coming from the right place. In a way, we're not actually trying to rip off their brand or logo. We're actually having some fun with it.
Yeah.
So it's never happened, but if it had, that would have been quite good for us at the time. But long story short, beer-wise, we're pretty much in every bottle store and most supermarkets anyway now. So the app is pretty much redundant now as far as, if you stood there now, it would just be dots everywhere and it would just, you'd have to zoom out. But I think it's still, but not actually, you can go to the videos, there's all sorts of stuff there. So we may look at that app and see if we can maybe adjust it and make it for a different sort of reason, keep that feature. It's a great feature, but maybe make it more of a interactive thing or something.
Yeah, I was going to say you could do interactive with your loyal clients and maybe do promotions.
Yeah, there's definitely something we need to look at because we invested a bit of money into it and it was a good laugh. But it's just an example, one of those ideas where that's an example where we probably were sitting down and thinking, what could we do different from everyone else? And in the app world, as you know, it moves pretty fast, that whole sort of thing. So by the time you've come up with it, it's probably, you can just go on Facebook nowadays and say wherever all the bars or something. But I don't know, it seemed to work. Yeah.
So going forward with your marketing, have you got any sort of changes that you're envisaging going forward at the moment, near future?
Not really, other than, as I say, you've got to be prepared for whatever comes your way, as in social media seems to be diminished compared to previous years. You just know that from, you could do a post 5 years ago and you know what kind of response you get compared to now. It's just sort of more watered down, and I think the likes of Facebook and that, they're a lot more wary of I suppose commercial people on using those things. So the algorithms will slow it down pretty much until you start paying them again to do it. So I think, if anything, a bit like a band, things can go full circle. And if I had the energy, I'm almost feeling going back to the most basic form of marketing and maybe hitting the road.
Right.
Like
Okay.
a sort of like a road trip type thing, maybe like a van or going down the country and more having small events or that kind of stuff around the place, which you support, of course, with social media, and that gives you content for social media.
Yeah.
But actually do something, as opposed to
That would be
maybe
interesting.
put on a festival, maybe put on the Wakachangi music festival. It has nothing but 30 of the most unknown bands in the country. There's always a twist on it. Some sort of 20 of the worst bands you've never heard of. Compete for and put the beer on it, but make it a good fun day out in the sun, and just have some fun with that kind of stuff, and bring other people in on that. Who else could be involved? Even other brands, get other beers involved. Like-minded people, but that kind of stuff, because there's only so much I think you can do in social media. It's a narrow thing, and sometimes you, especially after just doing a TV show or something, you sort of get itching to get out there among the so-called real people, I suppose.
Back to the grassroots.
Yeah, and so I don't know what that so-called tour would look like or festival, but I think that's probably the only direction we can go in at the moment. Right. For now.
And look, you've mentioned about RTDs, but is there any other kind of products you're thinking about?
Yeah, and literally there's a few structural things going on at the moment within this whole thing, which needs to sort of get sorted a little bit. Nothing, nothing icky, just to so you can sort of compartmentalise things a bit better. But yeah, I think as you mentioned, there's that certain products that could fit within this thing without it looking like you're jumping the shark or trying to spread it all too thin. And the alcohol, I think RTDs definitely, and that would mean a couple of a few different flavours, perhaps another beer flavour.
Sure.
A slightly maybe a IPA or something, a cider. But then I wouldn't actually mind doing a whiskey and a vodka. Okay. And a tequila. So
that's a few.
So basically, getting a whole bar sorted from home. But those products, of course, I think will be coming in from overseas, and but you'd be playing the same old story, Great Uncle Kenny spent time in Cuba for a few years with Hemingway, and then he moved to Mexico where he met so and so and got this tequila, and then he brought it here, and this is the recipe we're bringing here now. I mean, you just look at the back of a wine bottle and read the shit that they have on that, and it's not even funny, but it's so overwritten, and that's kind of what it is. And that would be taking a different approach, because it would be bringing products ready-made already straight into it, as opposed to going through a brewery and making it. So that'll be the subtle difference there. But as far as branding and marketing goes, I don't think there'll be a lot different. It seems to be working, but having said that, I think you do need to step out of it sometimes, somehow, and look at it from the outside a bit.
And that's the challenge, isn't it? To try and get that perspective.
Yeah, because there's that old saying, you can't be too close to something, but I wouldn't say we're too close to it, but something could be staring you in the face when you might not be seeing it right now. So there's things we would have done differently if you could, but top of my head I can't think what, but I think maybe getting radio for the last few years was a point of difference compared to the years before that, and not doing radio anymore, it's gone back to more social media and etc. So Yeah, I think maybe, and radio gave you a direct connection with so-called people out there. You travel a lot, and so maybe I think there's an element of, I'm not talking about beer festivals so much because there's only so much of that you can do, but maybe getting on the road and doing something with a few bands or music.
Yeah,
could be fun. Yeah.
Now you just mentioned before about great Uncle Kenny. What do you think he will make of what you've done?
Oh, he's still alive. No. Well, no one knows if he's alive yet. There's rumours that he faked his death, but he should be dead by maybe 120 by now. No, I think he'd be proud.
Yeah.
The original recipes he had were probably a bit different than what we've done, but we've tried to keep the essence of what he had.
Right.
And he used to wing things a lot. Didn't always work out for him. He's a great ideas guy, but he couldn't really. He invented the laser beam before the whoever invented it did.
Right.
He was just urinating in the snow on a ski trip and noticed how that carved up through the snow. He said, if someone could harness that into some sort of laser, so that's as far as he took it.
Right.
Someone else obviously took it, the rest of it. So he had the ideas, a bit like me. It's whether you can
execute on it.
So I've still got his diaries, his old diaries, and this is where a lot of the stuff's in there.
Yeah.
Half recipes for drinks and that sort of stuff. Some of it's terrible, but some of it's all right. So I think I'd like to think he'd be proud.
And do you think there could be a book in the offing? Some great stories obviously to tell.
The memoirs of Great Uncle Kenny.
Yeah.
Back and forth, the future, the past, and that probably morph into a feature film, I would say. Or a mini-series, like Roots. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a mini-series would be great.
Yeah.
Like little bite-sized installments.
Great Uncle Kenny's Roots. Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, it's something that keeps coming up, though, Great Uncle Kenny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he obviously had a very colourful life, so...
Yeah, and it's good that the reason with him, he obviously existed, but it's... That, I believe, is a conscious effort, too, to kind of hang it all onto someone else, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Because it's too risky to have a lot of the stuff hanging on someone contemporary and real. Who knows what could happen, and to say you can alienate people that way, kind of thing. Whereas something a little bit more generic like that it's more of a myth, more of an attitude, is a safer kind of thing. Yeah, that's just reminding me. Remind me to back off from this a bit.
Oh, look, I think one of the things, Leigh, that I want, to come out of today for people is that, marketing doesn't have to be boring. In fact, it actually can be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And if you dare to be different, then potentially you can achieve cut-through. But, if you just want to copy what everyone else is doing, then don't expect a different result.
That's right. And I think if you're relying on other people to always do your marketing, they're probably copying other people. So by default, you'll be copying someone who's copying other people to do your job. And the one thing I would say is, look, you're probably better at marketing than you think you are.
Yeah.
Just because you didn't do a marketing degree, or of course we all live in this world, we see it, we're bombarded with marketing every day. We know what works for us, we know what ads we like, we know what attitude we like, we know what products we like. So just trust your own gut feeling a bit more. Doesn't mean you don't bring in people to help you execute it, but if you think I don't like that idea, have the balls to tell the people that maybe you're employed to help you with it, look, no, I don't like it, because it's your budget, it's your money.
Yeah.
More importantly, it's your product and brand and reputation. So just say, nah, it's no good. And even if you do spend some money on it, or time, or resources on it, and it's not what you wanted, have the confidence of balls to go, look, nah, we'll go something else, because there's no harm in spending 10 grand on something. Oh, shit. This is the same with anything, the TV or whatever, and that skit or that idea, it just didn't kind of work. And then someone suggests something, and you go do something for $200 or $50 and or on the iPhone, like we said,
yes.
and it worked better. the consumer out there, they don't know any of the backstory of what just happened with all this crap. All they know is what they see and what worked. And if that last idea marketed better than the first one, that's the one you should have gone with.
Yeah.
Don't just think we've spent this money, so we're tied into it now, or this agency, they're telling us what to do all the time. And look, whether you're a big company or small company, I've seen big companies which I've worked with before on both sides of it, and it's like a train that can't stop. This agency's run with an idea, and they're telling me already that, oh, I hate this stuff, and I go, why don't you tell them to stop it? Oh, I can't really, it's their kind of thing now.
Yeah.
No, it's not, it's yours. You're the one that's going to get bagged for the idea, not the agency. They'll move on to something else.
Mm.
So you just have confidence, and between you and your mates, you're going to find that's all the ideas are there.
Yeah.
Pretty much, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to, what's the word for it, bag or undermine marketing companies, because look, they're fantastic, and so are plenty of agencies, but only when they work in conjunction with you, because it's your thing. It's your instance, it's your product, you know it best, whether you like it or not, you do, and just trust your own instincts and let them help you, but don't let them run over you or run with it, you know?
Yeah, and look, I think that's really important. Like, I mean, I've been in lots of situations where I've had people that'll come to me and ask me to do their Facebook posts.
Yep.
I refuse to do it. And
Yep.
the reason I refuse to do it is because I believe that nobody knows their client base or their business better than they do.
Totally right.
And unless you're going to employ someone to come in and just physically basically work for them to get
Yep.
to know the business, they're never going to be totally over the business and
Yep.
create the sort of content you should be creating.
I mean, you could advise, you could say, oh, maybe you want to do that,
Yeah,
or
give
maybe
them
not
some
mention
tips.
that. Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
But end of the day, it's their thing, and they're
Yeah.
going to have to,
Yeah.
run with it. So,
Yeah, and then the other thing too I want people to get out of this is have a go.
yeah.
Have a go, and like with video, you use your iPhone, it's cheap.
Yep.
Have a go. There's nothing to lose with it. People are very accepting of video these days being off an iPhone. It doesn't have to be professionally done, and in some cases it's actually better that it's
Yeah,
not.
totally.
But have a crack.
It's more believable. They trust you more sometimes if they think this is literally you
Yeah.
talking directly
more authentic.
to your client. And also, as you say, have a go, because you will make mistakes, or you will...
Everybody does.
Mistakes probably not the word, but you will have moments where you go, oh, we could have done that better, but you're never going to have that moment unless you give it a go.
Yeah,
You got it.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And you don't want to die wondering.
that's exactly right.
All right, well, thank you so much, Leigh. It's
Thank
been
you.
really enjoyable.
Yeah, brilliant. No, I appreciate that.
really appreciate the
Oh,
time.
It's good fun.
Thank you.
Have a beer, eh?
All right, yeah. Look, we deserve that.